The alarm screamed through Station Omega-7 like a dying animal. Commander Tae-Jin Park rolled out of his bunk and hit the floor running. His combat boots pounded against the metal corridor as emergency lights bathed everything in angry red. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Tae-Jin grabbed his assault rifle from the weapons locker and sprinted toward the command center. 20 years of Navy SEAL training had taught him to move fast when things went wrong. Right now, everything felt very wrong. The massive space station shuddered around him. Through the reinforced windows, he could see shapes moving against the stars. Big shapes. Ships that looked nothing like anything humans had ever built. Lieutenant Bo-ram Kim was already at her post when Tae-Jin burst into the command center. Her fingers flew over the tactical display as she tried to make sense of what the sensors were telling her. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching from the outer system," she reported. "I count at least 50 vessels. Maybe more." Tae-Jin studied the display. The ships were huge, easily 10 times larger than Earth's biggest warships. They moved in perfect formation like predators closing in on wounded prey. "Communications, get me Earth Command," Tae-Jin ordered. Sergeant Woo-Bin Lee shook his head from the comm station. "I'm trying, sir. Something is jamming our signals. We can't reach anyone." Another massive tremor shook the station. This time the lights flickered and went out for several seconds. When they came back on, half the displays were showing error messages. "Incoming transmission," Woo-Bin announced. "It's coming from the alien fleet. Put it on screen." The main display crackled to life. The face that appeared was like nothing from Earth's nightmares. Gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones, 4 eyes that glowed with cold intelligence, a mouth filled with teeth that looked designed for tearing flesh. When it spoke, the words came through a translation system that made its voice sound mechanical and hollow. "Primitive creatures of the third planet," the alien said. "I am War Marshal Vextar of the Velkan Empire. Your species has been judged inferior. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now and your death will be swift." The transmission ended. The command center fell silent except for the hum of failing systems. "Well," said Corpsman Jinna Choi from her medical station. "He seems friendly." Nobody laughed. Tae-Jin looked around at his team. These were good people. The best Earth had to offer. Bo-ram had graduated top of her class from the Naval Academy. Woo-Bin could hack any system ever built. Gina had saved more lives than anyone could count. They deserved better than dying in a metal box surrounded by vacuum. "Options," Tae-Jin said. "We have defensive batteries," Bo-ram reported. "Particle cannons, missile pods, point defense systems. But sir, these aliens have ships the size of cities. Our weapons might as well be spitballs." Through the windows, the alien fleet was getting closer. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way, smooth curves that caught the light from nearby stars. They moved without sound through the empty space like sharks gliding through dark water. "Sir," Woo-Bin called out. "I'm picking up chatter from other stations. Omega-3 has gone dark. Omega-5 is reporting massive damage. It sounds like we're not the only ones under attack." Tae-Jin nodded. This was a coordinated assault on Earth's orbital defenses. Take out the stations first, then move on the planet below. It was a smart strategy. Exactly what he would do if he was planning an invasion. The problem was that humans had never faced an enemy like this before. Every war Earth had ever fought was against other humans. Same basic technology, same basic tactics, same basic weaknesses. These aliens were something completely different. "Contact!" Bo-ram shouted, multiple fighters launching from the main vessels. "They're heading straight for us." "All defensive systems online," Tae-Jin ordered. "Everyone to emergency stations. Jinna, get the medical bay ready. We're going to have wounded." The first wave of alien fighters looked like metal insects with wings that glowed blue-white. They moved fast, faster than anything human built. The station's automated defenses opened fire, sending streams of particle beams and explosive shells into space. Some of the fighters exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But more kept coming. Many more. "Direct hit on Section C," Bo-ram reported. "We've lost atmosphere in the crew quarters." The station shook again. This time pieces of metal and debris flew past the windows. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut automatically, sealing off the damaged sections. "Sir, we need to evacuate," Woo-Bin said. "The escape pods are still functional." Tae-Jin shook his head. "We hold our position. This station has the most advanced sensor array in the system. If we can gather intelligence on these aliens, it might help Earth's defenses." Another explosion rocked the station. The artificial gravity flickered, making everyone float for a few seconds before slamming them back down. Hull breach on level 7, Gina called out, sealing blast doors. The alien fighters were swarming around the station now. Their weapons fired some kind of energy beam that cut through the station's armor like a hot knife through butter. Human engineering had never been designed to face technology this advanced. Got something, Boram said, studying her tactical display. These fighters have a weakness. They rely on synchronized attacks. When one group fires, there's a brief delay before the next group can engage. Maybe 2 seconds. Can we exploit that? Taejin asked. Maybe. If we time our defensive fire perfectly, we might be able to create a gap in their formation. It was worth a try. Taejin took manual control of the main weapons array. His SEAL training had included zero-gravity combat and space warfare. He had never expected to use those skills defending a space station against alien invaders. But life had a way of surprising you. The next wave of fighters approached in perfect formation. Taejin waited. Patience was a sniper's best friend. At the last possible second, he opened fire. 3 fighters exploded. The gap in their formation was just wide enough for the station's point defense systems to target the larger ships behind them. Direct hit on one of their cruisers, Boram shouted. We actually hurt them. The victory was short-lived. The aliens responded by sending more fighters, many more. The swarm of metal insects grew thicker, blocking out the stars. We can't hold them, Wu Bin said quietly. Taejin knew he was right. The station was dying around them, systems failing one by one, hull breaches spreading like cancer through the superstructure. In a few minutes, there would be nothing left but twisted metal and frozen bodies. But he had learned something important. The aliens could be hurt. Their technology wasn't magic. It could be understood. It could be beaten, if anyone survived to use that knowledge. All hands abandon ship, Taejin ordered. Get to the escape pods. That's an order. His team moved quickly but without panic. They were professionals. Even facing the end of everything they knew, they did their jobs. Taejin was the last one to leave the command center. As he sealed the blast door behind him, he took one final look at the tactical display. The alien fleet was massive, hundreds of ships heading for Earth, but they had made one mistake. They thought humans were weak. They thought this would be easy. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The escape pod bay was chaos. Crew members from all over the station were scrambling into the small vessels. Most of the pods had already launched, carrying their human cargo away from the dying station. Sir, this way, Jinna called out. She was standing beside one of the last remaining pods. Boram and Wu Bin were already inside. Taejin sprinted across the bay. Behind him, he could hear the groaning of metal as the station's superstructure began to collapse. The alien fighters had done their work well. He dove into the escape pod just as another explosion shook the station. Jinna slammed her hand on the launch button. The pod shot away from the station like a bullet fired from a gun. Through the small porthole, Taejin watched Station Omega-7 die. The massive structure broke apart in slow motion, pieces spinning away into the darkness. 20 years of human engineering and scientific achievement, reduced to scrap metal in less than an hour. The alien fleet moved past the wreckage without slowing down. Their formation remained perfect, disciplined, professional. They had won this battle easily. Too easily. In the distance, Earth hung like a blue marble against the black of space. The aliens were heading straight for it. In a few hours, they would begin their assault on humanity's home world. But they had made their first mistake. They assumed the humans on the station were all dead. Their sensors showed no life signs in the wreckage. Their computers registered the battle as a complete victory. They were wrong. Commander Taejin Park was still alive, still thinking, still planning, and he was very, very angry. 3 days drifted by in the cold darkness of space. Commander Taejin Park floated inside his damaged escape pod, watching the alien fleet through the cracked viewport. His breath formed small clouds in the freezing air. The life support system was failing, but he had bigger problems to worry about. The Vulcan ships moved in perfect formation toward Earth. Their hulls gleamed silver against the stars. Beautiful and deadly like poisonous flowers. Taejin had spent the last 72 hours studying them. Every detail, every pattern, every weakness he could find. The aliens were efficient. Too efficient. They followed the same patrol routes at exactly the same times. Their supply ships traveled in predictable patterns. Their communications used standard frequencies that never changed. It was the kind of military precision that looked impressive, but had fatal flaws. Taejin had seen it before in human armies that had never faced a real enemy. They trained for perfect conditions and forgot that war was chaos. His pod sensors detected a small Velkan supply vessel approaching the debris field. The ship was alone, scanning the wreckage for salvageable technology. Its crew probably thought this was a routine mission. They were about to learn otherwise. Taejin had used the past 3 days to modify his pod systems. The emergency toolkit included basic repair equipment and a small cutting laser. Not much to work with, but Navy SEALs were trained to make weapons out of anything. The supply ship moved slowly through the debris. Its scanning beams swept back and forth like searchlights. When it passed close to his pod, Taejin activated the magnetic clamps he had jury-rigged to the hull. The pod attached itself to the alien ship with a soft thunk. Through the hull, he could hear alien voices speaking in their harsh language. They hadn't noticed the tiny addition to their vessel. For the next 6 hours, Taejin waited. Patience was a sniper's greatest weapon. When the supply ship finally docked with one of the larger Velkan cruisers, he made his move. The cutting laser sliced through the supply ship's hull like paper. Alien atmosphere rushed out into space, but the breach was small enough that the ship's emergency systems sealed it automatically. Taejin slipped inside through the tiny hole, moving like a ghost through the corridors. The ship was dark and quiet. Most of the crew was probably sleeping. The few aliens he encountered never saw him coming. 20 years of special operations training had taught him how to move without sound, how to kill without noise. By morning, 3 Velkan crew members had simply vanished. Their bodies floated in space far from their ship. The remaining crew found only empty corridors and malfunctioning equipment. The ship's captain, a tall alien with 4 arms and glowing red eyes, studied the damage reports with growing confusion. Systems were failing all over the vessel. Life support flickered on and off. Navigation computers showed impossible readings. Technical malfunction, the captain told his crew. These human weapons must have damaged our systems more than we thought. None of them suspected that a human was living in their ventilation shafts, learning their language by listening to their conversations. None of them realized that their most secure computer networks had been infiltrated by someone with nothing but time and determination. Taejin spent 2 weeks aboard the supply vessel. He learned how Velkan technology worked. He discovered their military codes and communication protocols. Most importantly, he found their greatest weakness. The aliens had never faced guerrilla warfare. Every enemy they had conquered fought traditional battles with fleets and armies. They had no concept of asymmetric warfare, no understanding of how a single determined opponent could turn their own systems against them. Captain Nixara, of the intelligence vessel, Void Seeker, was the first to notice something was wrong. She was younger than most Velkan officers, with silver skin and 6 arms that moved like mechanical limbs. Her job was to analyze patterns and identify threats. The patterns she was seeing made no sense. "War Marshal," she reported to Vextar during the daily briefing, "I am detecting unusual activities throughout the fleet. Equipment failures, missing personnel, communication disruptions. The incidents appear random, but I believe there may be a connection." Vextar dismissed her concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. The human weapons were more primitive than expected, but they still caused damage to our systems. These are normal maintenance issues. Sir, with respect, I have analyzed 17 separate incidents across 12 different vessels. The probability of random failure is less than 0.001%. Captain Nixara, you are seeing patterns where none exist. The humans are dead. Our sensors confirmed no survivors from their pathetic defense stations. Focus your attention on more important matters. But Nixara couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from the shadows. Her 4 eyes constantly scanned the corridors of her ship, looking for threats that might not exist. She was right to be worried. Taejin had moved to a larger vessel, a troop transport carrying thousands of Velkan soldiers toward Earth. The ship was so big that entire sections went unused during the journey. Perfect hiding places for a ghost who wanted to stay invisible. He spent his time learning everything he could about Velkan biology, psychology, and tactics. The aliens were strong and intelligent, but they thought in straight lines. They planned for expected threats and ignored possibilities that seemed impossible, like the possibility that a single human could infiltrate their fleet and turn it into his personal hunting ground. The troop, transport's commander, General Zekmoth, was a veteran of dozens of conquered worlds. He had crushed civilizations with casual efficiency. To him, humans were just another primitive species that would fall before Vulcan superiority. He never suspected that one of those primitives was walking through his ship's corridors every night, stealing weapons and gathering intelligence. The missing equipment was blamed on careless soldiers. The malfunctioning systems were attributed to battle damage. When 3 of his best officers disappeared during a single sleep cycle, Zekmoth finally began to worry. But even then he couldn't imagine the truth. Sabotage, he told his staff. Some of the human debris must have contained explosive devices. Our ships are being damaged by delayed action weapons. It was easier to believe in human bombs than to accept that a living enemy was moving through their fleet like a virus through a computer. System.Taijin listened to these conversations through the ventilation system, learning their language better every day. The aliens spoke of humans the way humans might discuss insects, annoying pests that needed to be exterminated, but nothing more. That attitude would be their downfall. By the end of the 3rd week, Taijin had gathered enough information to understand the full scope of the invasion. The Vulcan fleet consisted of over 300 ships carrying nearly 1 million soldiers. They planned to establish control centers in Earth's major cities and use human survivors as slave labor. It was a solid plan. It would have worked against any other species in the galaxy, but the Vulcans had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that humans were just another prey species, soft, weak creatures that would surrender when faced with superior force. They didn't understand that humans were predators. Earth's dominant species had climbed to the top of the food chain by being smarter, more adaptable, and more ruthless than anything else on their world. Now they were about to face the ultimate test of those abilities. Taijin began his real work on the 4th week. Instead of just gathering information, he started actively sabotaging the fleet's operations. Fuel lines developed mysterious leaks. Navigation computers began showing false readings. Communication arrays suffered unexplained failures. The damage was subtle but devastating. Ships fell out of formation. Supply convoys got lost in space. Battle groups lost contact with their commanders. The fleet is falling apart, Nixara reported to an increasingly angry Vextar. Whatever is causing these problems, it's getting worse. Then fix it, the War Marshal snarled. We reach Earth in 6 days. I will not allow technical difficulties to delay our conquest. But Nixara was beginning to suspect that these weren't technical difficulties at all. Something was hunting them. Something that understood their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. In the depths of the troop transport, Taijin smiled as he listened to their growing panic. The Vulcans were about to learn the most important lesson in human military history. Never assume your enemy is dead until you've seen the body. And sometimes, not even then. The message came through on an old emergency frequency that most people had forgotten existed. Dr. Heejin Yoon was working, late in her underground laboratory when the computer picked up the weak signal. This is Commander Taijin Park, Earth Defense Force. If anyone is receiving this transmission, respond immediately. Repeat, this is not a recording. Human forces are still active in the operational area. Heejin nearly dropped the Vulcan biosample she was studying. She had been working non-stop for 2 weeks, trying to understand alien technology that seemed impossible. Most of Earth's major cities had fallen. The governments were in chaos. Everyone assumed the orbital defense forces had been completely destroyed. But this voice was calm, professional, and very much alive. This is Dr. Haijin Yoon at Research Station Delta 7, she transmitted back. I'm reading you clearly, Commander. What's your status? I'm currently aboard a Vulcan troop transport, approximately 6 hours from Earth orbit. I have intelligence on enemy capabilities and weaknesses. I need to speak with any surviving resistance leaders immediately. Heejin's hands shook as she activated the secure communication network. Within minutes, she had connected Taijin with Master Sergeant Dongwook Nam in the ruins of Soul and Communications Specialist So Young Park in a hidden bunker beneath Tokyo. Sir, how is this possible? Dongwook asked. His voice carried the strain of 2 weeks fighting impossible odds. We saw the defense stations destroyed. Our satellites showed no survivors. The aliens made an assumption, Taijin replied. They assumed their sensors were perfect. They assumed no one could survive in the debris field. They assumed humans were too primitive to adapt to their technology. They were wrong on all counts. So Young's voice crackled through the static. Commander, we're barely holding defensive positions in the major cities. Enemy forces are too strong, too well coordinated. We need help, I understand. Listen carefully. I've spent 3 weeks studying these aliens. They have weaknesses we can exploit, but we need to change our tactics completely. Over the next hour, Taijin shared everything he had learned. The Velkans were technologically superior but tactically inflexible. They followed rigid patterns and couldn't adapt quickly to unexpected situations. Most importantly, their neural interface systems were vulnerable to a specific type of electromagnetic interference. Dr. Yoon, are you still working with captured Velkan equipment? Taijin asked. Yes, sir. I've been analyzing their biotechnology for the past 2 weeks. It's incredibly advanced, but I've made some interesting discoveries. Such as? Heejin pulled up her research data on the main screen. Their neural interfaces operate on quantum frequencies that match human brainwave patterns. It's probably coincidence, but it means human minds can potentially access their systems. Can you weaponize that information? Maybe. If we could modify their interface technology, we might be able to turn their own equipment against them. But I would need more samples, and the work would be extremely dangerous. I can get you samples. Sergeant Nam, what's your current strength? Dongwook's report was grim. I have maybe 200 fighters left in the Seoul sector. We're using hit-and-run tactics, but we're running low on ammunition and medical supplies. The enemy has established a command center in the city's financial district. Perfect. That command center is your target. So Young, what about communication networks? Most military channels are compromised, but I've established contact with resistance cells in 12 cities. We're using old radio frequencies and coded messages. The aliens don't seem to understand our more primitive communication methods. Taijin smiled in the darkness of his hiding place. That's their second mistake. They're so advanced they've forgotten how to fight a low-tech war. Here's what we're going to do. The plan he outlined was dangerous and complex. Each resistance cell would coordinate simultaneous attacks on Velkan command posts. But instead of trying to destroy them, they would capture alien equipment and personnel for Dr. Yoon to study. Sir, with respect, our people aren't trained for this kind of operation. Dongwook protested. We're fighting for survival, not running scientific experiments. Sergeant, survival is exactly what this is about. The aliens expect us to fight like humans have always fought. Big armies, direct confrontation, winner takes all. If we keep doing that, we'll lose. But if we fight like no one has ever fought before, we might have a chance. Heejin understood what he was suggesting. You want us to become something new. Not just human soldiers, but human soldiers with alien technology. Exactly. The Velkans have conquered dozens of worlds, but they've never faced an enemy that could adapt their own weapons and turn them around in the middle of a battle. We're going to give them a war they've never seen before. The first coordinated attack came 3 days later. Dongwook's team hit the Seoul Command Center just as So Young's people struck in Tokyo. The battles were short and vicious, but the humans achieved their objectives. Instead of destroying everything, they captured intact Velkan communication equipment, weapons, and even a few prisoners. The alien commander in Seoul, General Kexvoth, was completely unprepared for human tactics. His soldiers were trained to fight other high-tech armies with predictable strategies. When faced with enemies who used captured alien weapons alongside primitive human explosives, his forces fell into confusion. Impossible, he told his staff as reports came in. How are these primitives operating our equipment? Their brains are too simple to understand quantum interface technology. But the evidence was right in front of him. Human fighters were using Velkan energy weapons with deadly efficiency. Somehow they had learned to access alien computer systems and turn defensive barriers into traps. Aboard the troop transport, Taijin monitored the battles through hacked communication channels. The plan was working better than he had hoped. Human adaptability was proving to be just as dangerous as he had predicted. Dr. Yoon, how's the research progressing? He asked during a coded transmission. Amazing results, Commander. The neural interfaces can definitely be modified for human use, but there's something else. The aliens' quantum communication system works both ways. If I can build the right equipment, we might be able to send false information directly into their command network. How long do you need? Give me a week. Maybe less if So Young can help with the technical details. You've got it. Sergeant Nam, I need you to hold your positions and keep pressure on the enemy. But don't try for any major victories yet. We want them confused, not desperate. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Human resistance cells attacked and retreated, captured equipment and disappeared, hit enemy patrols and vanished into the urban landscape like ghosts. The Velkans had never faced an enemy like this. Every species they had conquered fought predictable battles. Line up your forces, use your best weapons, and see who wins. Simple and efficient, but humans weren't following the rules. They fought like scavengers and predators at the same time. They used everything as a weapon, from captured alien technology to homemade explosives made from household chemicals. Captain Nixara watched the tactical reports with growing alarm. War Marshal, the human resistance is becoming more organized and more effective. They're learning to use our own technology against us. Vextar studied the data with 4 angry eyes. Impossible. These creatures are barely above animal intelligence. They cannot master Velkan technology in a few days. Sir, the evidence suggests otherwise. Look at these battle reports from Seoul, Tokyo, London, and New York. In every case, human forces used captured weapons and equipment with near-expert skill. Then we will simply destroy them faster, Vextar decided. Deploy heavy assault units to all major cities. Level the resistance centers. If we cannot control these humans, we will exterminate them. It was exactly the reaction Taijin had been hoping for. Angry enemies made mistakes. Desperate enemies made bigger mistakes. All units, this is Ghost Protocol. He transmitted to the resistance networks. The aliens are about to escalate. Heavy units incoming to all major population centers. Switch to Phase 2 immediately. Phase 2 was Dr. Yoon's masterpiece. The modified neural interfaces she had created could send false information directly into Velkan command systems. But more importantly, they could override alien equipment from a distance. As the heavy assault units approached Earth cities, human teams activated the hijacked systems. Velkan tanks suddenly stopped responding to their crews. Fighter aircraft turned on their own squadrons. Command posts lost contact with their forces. What is happening? Vextar roared as his carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos. Nixara stared at her tactical displays in disbelief. Sir, our equipment is malfunctioning on a massive scale. Weapon systems, communications, navigation, life support, everything is failing simultaneously. Sabotage? I don't know how, sir, but yes. Someone is controlling our technology remotely. The humans have found a way to turn our own weapons against us. For the first time since the invasion began, War Marshal Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Fear. The humans weren't just surviving. They weren't just adapting. They were evolving in real time, becoming something new and dangerous. Something that could hunt aliens with alien weapons. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Commander. Taejin Park smiled as he watched the enemy fleet fall into confusion. The real war was just beginning. The Velkan flagship Eternal Dominion was the most secure vessel in the entire fleet. Its hull was 3 meters thick. Its corridors were patrolled by elite guards. Its command center was protected by energy shields that could stop a nuclear explosion. None of that mattered to Commander Taejin Park. He had spent 4 weeks learning every detail of Velkan security systems. Their scanners looked for energy signatures and life signs, but they couldn't detect someone who knew exactly how to hide from them. Their guards followed predictable patrol routes. Their shields had gaps that lasted exactly 2.3 seconds during shift changes, more than enough time for a Navy SEAL. Taejin moved through the flagship's ventilation system like smoke through air. 20 years of special operations had taught him to become invisible when necessary. Now he was hunting the most dangerous prey in the galaxy. The command conference was scheduled for 0800 ship time. War Marshal Vextar would meet with his senior officers to discuss the human problem on Earth. They would debate strategies and assign blame for their recent failures. They would never suspect that their target was already among them. The conference room was located in the ship's most secure section. Getting there required passing through 12 checkpoints, 6 scanning stations, and 2 different security zones. For a normal intruder, it would be impossible. But Taejin wasn't normal. He was human. The first checkpoint used thermal imaging to detect body heat. Taejin had learned to control his core temperature using meditation techniques from his SEAL training. The scanners registered nothing unusual. The second checkpoint analyzed air composition for foreign biological markers. Taejin held his breath and moved like a ghost past the sensors. The third checkpoint was more sophisticated. It used quantum resonance scanning to detect living tissue at the molecular level. This one required more creativity. Taijin had spent 2 days preparing for this moment. He wore a skin-tight suit made from materials he had salvaged from damaged Velkin equipment. The suit mimicked alien biological signatures well enough to fool automated systems. The remaining checkpoints fell one by one. Each obstacle was carefully studied, patiently analyzed, and eventually overcome. What the aliens saw as perfect security, Taijin saw as a puzzle to be solved. By 0750, he was hidden in the conference room ceiling, listening to Velkin officers file in below. Their voices carried the strain of commanders who were losing a war they thought would be easy. "The humans are becoming more dangerous every day," complained General Zekmoth. "My assault forces are being ambushed by enemies using our own weapons against us. Intelligence suggests they have learned to modify our neural interfaces," added Admiral Kexadana. "Somehow they are accessing our communication networks and sending false orders to our units." War Marshal Vextar took his seat at the head of the massive conference table. His 4 eyes glowed with barely contained rage. "These creatures are insects, pests. How are they causing such problems for the most advanced military in the galaxy?" Captain Nixara activated her data displays. "Sir, I believe we have underestimated human adaptability. Every strategy we employ, they find ways to counter within hours. Every technology we deploy, they learn to use against us within days." "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "Their brains are primitive. Their civilization is barely out of its infancy. They should be cowering in caves, not fighting coordinated battles with captured equipment." "With respect, sir, the evidence suggests otherwise," Nixara continued. "Human neural patterns are uniquely flexible. They can adapt to new situations faster than any species we have encountered. Combined with their natural aggression and creativity, this makes them extremely dangerous opponents." General Zekmoth slammed his fist on the table. "Then we exterminate them completely. Deploy chemical weapons, biological warfare, nuclear bombardment, turn their planet into a wasteland and be done with it." "That would destroy the planet's resources," Admiral Kexdana pointed out. "The High Command expects us to deliver a functioning world with exploitable populations. Complete genocide would be seen as failure." Above them, hidden in the darkness, Taijin listened to every word. These aliens were discussing the destruction of his species like farmers debating how to control crop pests. Their casual cruelty was matched only by their growing desperation. "Sir," Nixara said quietly, "there is another possibility we must consider." "Speak." "What if there are survivors from the orbital defense stations? What if someone with advanced military training has been operating behind our lines?" The conference room fell silent. For several long seconds, the only sound was the hum of the ship's engines. "Our sensors detected no survivors," Vextar said finally. "The defense stations were completely destroyed. Our sensors are designed to detect normal life signs under normal conditions," Nixara replied. "Someone with specialized training might know how to avoid detection." "You're suggesting that a single human has been sabotaging our entire fleet?" General Zekmoth's voice dripped with disbelief. "One primitive creature against the might of the Velkin Empire? It would explain the pattern of failures we've experienced. Random sabotage. Stolen intelligence, coordinated attacks using information that should be impossible to obtain. If someone has been moving through our ships undetected." Taijin smiled in the darkness. Captain Nixara was smarter than the rest of them. She had figured out the truth. Too bad it was too late to help them. "Even if such a person exists," Vextar said slowly, "they would be trapped aboard our vessels. Cut off from their homeworld. Eventually they would make a mistake." "Unless," Nixara whispered, "they're not trying to escape. Unless they're hunting us." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. These were beings who had conquered dozens of worlds. But the idea of being hunted by their prey filled them with primitive dread. "Impossible," Vextar repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sir, I recommend we implement immediate security protocols," Nixara continued. "Full bioscans of all vessels. Enhanced patrols. Lockdown of sensitive areas. Do it," Vextar ordered. "If there is a ghost in our machines, we will find it and destroy it." The meeting ended 20 minutes later. As the officers filed out, Taijin remained hidden in the ceiling. He had learned what he came for. The aliens were finally taking the human threat seriously, but they still didn't understand what they were facing. They thought in terms of single threats and simple solutions. Find the saboteur. Kill the saboteur. Problem solved. They couldn't conceive of an enemy who had already turned their entire fleet into his weapon. Over the following days, the enhanced security measures went into effect. Bioscanners were installed throughout the fleet. Patrol schedules became random and unpredictable. Access to sensitive areas required multiple authorization codes. But Tajin had anticipated all of this. While the aliens were looking for him, he was busy implementing the next phase of his plan. Deep in the ship's data core, he planted a virus in the fleet's communication system. Not a random piece of destructive code, but something far more sophisticated. A program that would learn the fleet's operational patterns and slowly, subtly begin changing them. Supply convoys would be rerouted to empty space. Battle groups would receive contradictory orders. Individual ships would lose contact with the fleet at critical moments. The beauty of it was that the changes would seem random at first. Equipment failures, communication glitches, navigation errors. Nothing that couldn't be explained by the stress of combat operations. But as the pattern continued, it would create a cascade of failures throughout the Vulcan command structure. Orders would be delayed, misunderstood, or lost completely. Units would find themselves isolated and vulnerable. While the aliens hunted for a saboteur, their entire fleet would slowly dissolve into chaos. Colonel Minho Quan received the first coded transmission on Earth 2 days later. The message was brief but clear. Phase 3 initiated. Prepare for coordinated strike. Enemy fleet compromised. Minho had been leading resistance operations in the ruins of Busan. His fighters were outnumbered, outgunned, and running low on supplies. But they had something the aliens didn't understand: hope. All units, this is Patriot Base, he transmitted to resistance cells across the Korean peninsula. Ghost Protocol reports enemy fleet in disarray. Prepare for major offensive operations. The response was immediate. In Seoul, Sergeant Nam's urban fighters began emerging from their hiding places. In Tokyo, So Young's communication team started broadcasting on frequencies the aliens couldn't jam. Around the world, human resistance forces prepared for battles they finally had a chance of winning. Dr. Yoon's modified neural interfaces had given them the ability to hack Vulcan technology. Tajin's intelligence had revealed enemy weaknesses and tactics. But most importantly, the humans had learned something the aliens never expected. They had learned to fight like predators, not the desperate defense of cornered prey, but the calculated hunt of apex predators who had found wounded quarry. The Vulcans were about to discover that humans had spent millions of years evolving into the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy. They had sharp teeth, but humans had sharp minds. They had advanced technology, but humans had something better: the ability to turn any advantage into a weapon. The real war was about to begin. War Marshal Vextar stared at the tactical display with growing horror. In the past week, his fleet had lost contact with 47 vessels. Supply convoys were disappearing into empty space. Battle groups were receiving contradictory orders and firing on each other. The mighty Vulcan war machine was tearing itself apart. "Find him," Vextar commanded Captain Nixara. "I don't care what it takes. Find this ghost and bring me his head." Nixara had been working without sleep for 3 days, analyzing every piece of data from the fleet's security systems. Her 6 arms moved across multiple displays simultaneously as she searched for patterns in the chaos. "Sir, I believe I've isolated the source of our communication problems," she reported. "Someone has inserted an adaptive virus into our primary data networks. It's learning our operational patterns and introducing subtle changes that cascade into major failures. Can you remove it?" "Not without shutting down the entire fleet's communication system for several hours. We would be completely blind and defenseless during that time." Vextar's claws scraped against the metal deck. "Then we hunt him the old way. Deploy hunter-killer teams to every ship in the fleet. Tear apart every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every storage compartment. He cannot hide forever." But even as he gave the orders, Vextar knew they were playing into their enemy's hands. The human had survived for over a month in the heart of the Vulcan fleet. He clearly understood their technology better than they understood his capabilities. Across the fleet, elite Vulcan soldiers began the largest manhunt in their species' history. Teams of specially trained warriors swept through ship after ship, using advanced sensors and tracking equipment to search for any sign of human presence. They found nothing but shadows and whispers. Meanwhile, on Earth, the resistance forces prepared for their most ambitious operation yet. Dr. Yoon had finished her analysis of captured Vulcan equipment and made a startling discovery. The aliens have a weakness they don't even know about: she explained to the assembled resistance leaders via encrypted communication. Their neural interfaces create a quantum entanglement effect with their ship's computer systems. If we can overload that connection, we can effectively lobotomize their entire command structure. Sergeant Nam studied the technical specifications she had transmitted. Dr. Yoon, I'm a soldier, not a scientist. Tell me in simple terms, can we use this against them? Better than that. We can turn their most advanced ships into weapons against their own fleet. The plan was incredibly dangerous. It required coordinated attacks on Velkan command centers in 12 major cities, timed to coincide with a massive electromagnetic pulse that would overload the aliens' neural networks. Colonel Min-ho Kwon reviewed the assault plans from his bunker beneath Busan. His forces were ready, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Commander Park, he transmitted on the coded frequency. Are you certain the fleet will be vulnerable during this window? Tae-jin's response came from somewhere deep in the Velkan flagship. Confirmed, Colonel. I've been monitoring their hunter-killer operations. They're pulling security forces from critical areas to search for me. When you hit the ground targets, I'll ensure their space-based support is neutralized. And if something goes wrong, there was a long pause before Tae-jin replied. Then you continue the mission without me. Earth survival is more important than any single soldier. The attack began at 0600 Earth Standard Time. Human resistance forces emerged from hiding places across the globe and struck Velkan installations with coordinated precision. But this time they weren't just trying to capture equipment or gather intelligence. This time they were going for the kill. In Seoul, Sergeant Nam led 200 fighters against the aliens' primary command center. The building was heavily defended, but the humans had advantages the Velkans couldn't counter. They knew the terrain. They understood urban warfare. Most importantly, they were fighting for their home. The battle was vicious and chaotic. Velkan soldiers found themselves facing enemies who used every trick learned from centuries of human conflict. Improvised explosives, sniper fire from unexpected angles, coordinated attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. How are they doing this? General Zekmoth demanded as his forces fell back under the relentless human assault. These creatures fight like they can see through walls and predict our movements. They could. Dr. Yoon's modified neural interfaces allowed human fighters to tap into Velkan communication networks and intercept orders in real time. The aliens were literally telling their enemies what they planned to do before they did it. Similar battles raged in Tokyo, London, New York, and 8 other major cities. In each case, the humans fought with a combination of primitive tactics and stolen alien technology that the Velkans couldn't counter. But the real surprise came from space. As the ground battles reached their climax, pilot Kyung-soo Lim launched his attack on the Velkan orbital platforms. His fighter squadron consisted of modified alien vessels that had been captured and reverse-engineered by engineer Yoon-ju Han. The Velkan fleet was in chaos. Half their ships were searching for the saboteur who had been plaguing them for weeks. The other half were trying to provide support to their ground forces. None of them were prepared for an attack by their own technology. Contact bearing 270, reported Lieutenant Hwan-ju Im from her modified Velkan interceptor. Multiple alien fighters approaching. Confirmed, Kyung-soo replied. Remember, we look like them on their sensors. Get close before you reveal hostile intent. The captured alien fighters moved through the Velkan formation like wolves among sheep. Their transponders broadcast Velkan identification codes. Their hulls carried authentic alien markings that Yoon-ju had painstakingly copied from wreckage. By the time the Velkans realized what was happening, it was too late. Open fire, Kyung-soo commanded. The human pilots struck without warning, their weapons cutting through Velkan shields like razors through paper. The enemy formation dissolved into chaos as ships exploded around them. Impossible, Admiral Kexadana gasped as her flagship shuddered under human fire. How did they get our ships? How did they learn to fly them? She would never get an answer. Kyung-soo's fighter put 3 energy bolts through her bridge, ending her questions forever. Aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, Vextar watched his carefully planned invasion collapse in real time. His ground forces were being overwhelmed by primitive humans using advanced tactics. His space fleet was being destroyed by his own technology turned against him. And somewhere in his ship, the Ghost was still hunting. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a human female with cold, determined eyes. Captain Eugen Beck of the newly formed Earth Defense Force spoke with the authority of someone who had won a war that should have been impossible to win. "War Marshal Vextar," she said, "I am offering you one chance to surrender. Withdraw your forces from Earth immediately, or face complete destruction." Vextar's rage boiled over. "You dare threaten the Velkan Empire? We have conquered 100 worlds. Your pathetic species will be extinct within the day. Your 100 conquered worlds never fought back the way humans fight," Eugen replied calmly. "They never turned your own weapons against you. They never learned to think like predators. We are the predators here, human. You are merely prey that has forgotten its place." Eugen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Vextar's blood run cold. "War Marshal, you made one critical error in your invasion planning. You assumed that humans were like every other species you've conquered. Weak, predictable, limited by their own biology and psychology. And we are correct. Your entire civilization is built on chaos and violence. You have no discipline, no unity, no strategic thinking beyond your primitive emotions." "You're right about the chaos and violence," Eugen agreed. "Humans have been killing each other for millions of years. We've perfected every form of warfare imaginable. We've learned to turn anything into a weapon and anyone into a soldier. That's not a weakness, War Marshal. That's our greatest strength." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his command staff worked frantically to coordinate their remaining forces, but the damage was too extensive. The human virus had corrupted their communications beyond repair. Their ground forces were in retreat. Their space fleet was scattered and demoralized. "Sir," Captain Nixara reported, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups from the human installations on the planet's surface." "What kind of energy?" "I'm not certain. It appears to be some kind of electromagnetic pulse device, but the power levels are off our charts." Vextar studied the sensor readings with growing dread. The humans weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were preparing to go on the offensive. "How long until the pulse reaches us?" "Approximately 10 minutes, sir. All ships prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. We're leaving this system immediately." But even as he gave the order, Vextar knew it was too late. The human electromagnetic pulse wasn't designed to destroy the Velkan fleet. It was designed to disable their jump drives and trap them in Earth's solar system. The humans weren't content to simply repel the invasion. They wanted to capture the entire Velkan fleet and add it to their own forces. In the depths of the flagship, Commander Tae-Jin Park listened to the increasingly desperate orders coming from the bridge. The Velkans were finally beginning to understand what they were facing. Not just another conquered species, but something far more dangerous. A species that learned from every battle, adapted to every challenge, and turned every defeat into a lesson for the next victory. Tae-Jin had spent 5 weeks in the heart of the enemy fleet, learning everything he could about their technology, psychology, and tactics. Now it was time to use that knowledge. He made his way through corridors filled with panicking alien soldiers, invisible to their sensors and undetected by their security systems. The hunter-killer teams were still searching for him in the wrong sections of the ship. His target was the flagship's main computer core. If he could access the central processing unit, he could upload Dr. Yoon's virus directly into the fleet's command network. The electromagnetic pulse from Earth would overload their neural interfaces, but his virus would ensure they couldn't recover. The computer core was protected by the ship's most sophisticated defenses. Energy barriers, automated weapons, quantum locks that required biological authorization from senior officers. For a normal intruder, it would be impossible to breach. But Tae-Jin had been studying Velkan biology for 5 weeks. He had samples of alien tissue, recordings of their neural patterns, and detailed knowledge of their security protocols. More importantly, he had something the aliens had never encountered before: human creativity applied to alien technology. The defenses fell one by one. Energy barriers were bypassed using modified alien equipment. Automated weapons were turned against each other using hacked targeting systems. Quantum locks were opened with biological samples from Velkan officers he had eliminated weeks earlier. When he finally reached the core, Tae-Jin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Velkans had built the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. They had created weapons that could destroy worlds and ships that could cross space in the blink of an eye. but they had never imagined that a single determined human could turn all of that power against them. He inserted Dr. Yoon's virus into the core and watched as it began spreading through the fleet's entire network. Within minutes, every Velkin ship in the system would be under human control. The hunters had become the hunted, and the humans were just getting started. The virus spread through the Velkin fleet like wildfire through dry grass. In less than 30 minutes, every ship in Earth's solar system was under human control. Their weapons turned toward each other. Their navigation systems locked onto coordinates chosen by human operators. Their life support systems responded only to commands from the planet below. War Marshal Vextar watched his empire crumble from the bridge of his own flagship. The ship that had once been the most powerful vessel in Velkin space was now little more than a prison, floating in Earth's orbit. "Sir," Captain Nixera reported with barely controlled desperation, "the humans are requesting your presence in the main conference room." "Requesting?" "Sir, they control everything. Life support, gravity, communications. If we don't comply, they can simply turn off the air." Vextar had commanded fleets that conquered worlds. He had broken civilizations and enslaved entire species. Now he was being summoned like a subordinate by the very creatures he had come to exterminate. The walk to the conference room felt like a march to execution. Falcon soldiers lined the corridors, their weapons useless against enemies who controlled the ship's computer systems. They could only watch as their war marshal walked toward a meeting that would decide the fate of their entire species. Commander Taejin Park was waiting in the conference room, dressed in a clean Earth Defense Force uniform that someone had transported up from the planet. He looked nothing like the ghost who had haunted the Velkin fleet for 5 weeks. Clean-shaven, well-rested, completely at ease. Behind him stood Captain Yoo-jin Baek and Lieutenant Commander Jae-woo Song, representing Earth's newly formed space fleet. The humans had taken barely 6 hours to organize themselves into a proper military hierarchy. "War Marshal," Taejin said politely, "please take a seat." Vextar remained standing. "I am a leader of the Velkin Empire. I do not negotiate with inferior species." "Actually," Yoo-jin interjected, "you're a prisoner of war. The only question is whether you'll be a cooperative prisoner or a dead one." Jae-woo activated a holographic display showing the tactical situation in Earth's solar system. "Your fleet consists of 312 vessels. All are now under human control. Your ground forces have surrendered in 11 of the 12 occupied cities. The remaining holdouts will be eliminated within the hour." "This is impossible," Vextar snarled. "You are primitives. Your technology is centuries behind ours." "Our technology may be," Taejin agreed, "but your technology works just fine when humans are operating it." The display changed to show the captured Velkin vessels being integrated into Earth's defense grid. Human crews were already aboard the alien ships, learning their systems and improving their efficiency. Engineer Yoonju Han had teams of technicians reverse engineering Velkin weapons and adapting them for human use. "The interesting thing about human psychology," Yoo-jin continued, "is that we don't just defend our territory. When someone attacks us, we attack back, harder." Vextar finally understood what they were suggesting. "You cannot be serious. You would attack the Velkin Empire." "We would destroy the Velkin Empire," Jae-woo corrected. "Your species made the mistake of teaching us how your technology works. Now we can build it better than you can." Taejin pulled up another display showing intelligence data he had gathered during his weeks aboard the Velkin fleet. "Your empire controls 47 star systems and has a total military force of approximately 50,000 ships. But your forces are spread across hundreds of light years, with no central coordination. Meanwhile," Yoo-jin added, "you've just given us 300 of your most advanced vessels, complete with navigation data for every world in your empire. You've also provided us with detailed information about your military capabilities, defensive strategies, and political structure. In human military terms," Jae-woo said with a smile, "you've given us everything we need to destroy you completely." Vextar's 4 eyes widened with horror as the full implications hit him. The Velkin Empire had spent centuries building their military might through conquest and intimidation. But they had never faced an enemy that could absorb their own technology and turn it against them. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "Complete surrender of all Velkin forces in this sector," Taejin replied. "Immediate withdrawal from all occupied worlds. Reparations for the damage caused by your invasion. And in exchange, we don't hunt your species to extinction." The word hunt sent chills through every Velkin in the room. For the first time in their history, they were not the predators. They were prey being stalked by something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. You would not survive an extended war with our empire, Vextar protested weakly. Our resources are vast. Our technology is superior. Your technology was superior, Eugen corrected. Now it's our technology. And humans have a saying, anything you can do, we can do better. To prove her point, she activated another display showing human modifications to captured Velkin weapons. Earth's engineers had already improved their efficiency by 30% and reduced their power consumption by half. Dr. Yoon's team has been studying your neural interface technology, Jae-woo added. They've discovered ways to increase processing speed and expand memory capacity that your own scientists never considered. The truth is, War Marshal, Tae-jin said, your species has become comfortable with easy victories. You've forgotten how to fight against opponents who can match your technology and exceed your creativity. On the display, human-modified Velkin ships began launching from Earth's orbital shipyards. The vessels looked similar to their original designs, but sleeker, faster, more deadly. Human engineering had taken alien concepts and refined them into something approaching perfection. We estimate that our first wave of attack ships will reach Velkin space in approximately 6 months, Eugen reported. By then, we'll have reverse-engineered your entire technology base and improved upon it. Unless, Tae-jin added, you accept our terms and avoid that unpleasantness entirely. Vextar looked around the conference room at the faces of his captors. These humans showed no mercy, but they also showed no unnecessary cruelty. They were offering him a choice between surrender and extinction. It wasn't really a choice at all. I will need to consult with the High Command, he said finally. Of course, Tae-jin agreed. You have 12 hours to reach a decision. After that, we assume your answer is no and act accordingly. The transmission to Velkin High Command took place 6 hours later. The Council of Elder Aliens who governed their empire gathered in their most secure chamber to hear Vextar's report. The humans are not what we believed, he began. They are not primitives. They are not weak. They are apex predators who have learned to use our own weapons against us more effectively than we can use them ourselves. Grand Admiral Kothvel, Supreme Commander of all Velkin forces, studied the tactical data with disbelief. You are suggesting that a single world defeated the greatest invasion fleet in our history? I am stating it as fact, Grand Admiral. The humans have capabilities we never suspected. They can adapt to any technology, learn from any defeat, and turn any advantage into a weapon. Then we send a larger fleet, overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Sir, Vexitar said quietly, they have 300 of our most advanced ships, crewed by beings who think like predators and fight like demons. By the time a relief fleet arrives, they will have had months to study our technology and improve upon it. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. What are you recommending? Grand Admiral Kothvel asked. Complete withdrawal from human space, full recognition of their territorial claims, immediate cessation of all hostile activities. You're suggesting we surrender to a primitive species. I'm suggesting we avoid extinction at the hands of a species that makes us look primitive. The vote was close, but survival instinct won over pride. The Velkin High Command authorized complete withdrawal from Earth and recognition of human sovereignty over their solar system. But they also began immediate preparations for the war they knew was coming. Because the humans had made one thing perfectly clear. They weren't content to simply defend their home. They had tasted victory and now they wanted more. 3 months later, the first human exploration ships appeared at the edge of Velkin space. The vessels were clearly built using Velkin technology, but they were sleeker, faster, and more heavily armed than anything in the alien fleet. The message they transmitted was brief and terrifying. This is Admiral Tae-jin Park of the Earth Defense Force. We are conducting peaceful exploration of this sector. Do not interfere with our operations, and we will not interfere with yours. Grand Admiral Kothvel stared at the tactical display showing dozens of human ships moving through space that had been Velkin territory for centuries. How many ships do they have now? Intelligence estimates over 1,000, sir. They're building new vessels every day using improved versions of our own technology. And their intentions? Unknown, sir. But they're not acting like a defensive force anymore. They're acting like conquerors. The Velkins had awakened something terrible. For millions of years, humans had been confined to a single world, fighting among themselves. Now they were loose in the galaxy, with technology that surpassed their creators and instincts honed by eons of warfare. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy had finally learned to hunt among the stars, and the rest of the galaxy was about to discover why humans were the apex species on their homeworld. The age of human expansion had begun,